March 2026. An Iranian warship sinks 40 nautical miles south of Sri Lanka. Not in the Persian Gulf, not near Hormuz, in India's backyard. A US submarine fired the torpedo. The ship that went down had been docked at an Indian port just weeks earlier for a naval review hosted by New Delhi. India invited this vessel. America sank it. And when the surviving Iranian frigate limped into the southern Indian port of Kochi asking for emergency shelter, India said yes and housed 183 Iranian sailors at its own naval facilities. Washington stayed silent. Tehran called India a friend. That incident revealed something nobody wanted to admit. India doesn't control the Indian Ocean, it just lives there. Everyone obsesses over Taiwan, the South China Sea, Ukraine. They're staring at the wrong water. The Indian Ocean carries 2/3 of the world's oil shipments, 1/3 of all bulk cargo, and it's the only place on Earth where 3 nuclear powers with a combined population of 3 billion people are circling each other with zero institutional rules to stop miscalculation from becoming catastrophe. This ocean isn't just another body of water with trade routes and naval patrols. It's the physical infrastructure holding globalization together. 80% of seaborne oil trade moves through 3 choke points here. Hormuz handles 40%. Malacca takes 35%. Bab el Mandeb gets 8%. If any one of those narrows closes for more than a week, you're not dealing with higher gas prices. You're dealing with entire economies going offline. The Strait of Malacca funnels 94,000 vessels a year through a channel that narrows to 1.5 nautical miles at the Phillip Channel near Singapore. A single well-placed minefield could choke 25% of the world's traded goods. Chinese manufactured products, Indonesian coffee, Malaysian palm oil, all of it stopped. And 35% of global oil transported by sea flows through that gap. There's no alternate route that doesn't add weeks and billions to the journey. Then there's Hormuz, 21 miles wide. 1/5 of the world's daily oil consumption squeezes through it. When Iran threatened closure in 2025, Brent crude spiked 15% in one afternoon. Not because Iran actually closed it, because the threat alone was enough. We've entered what strategists are calling the choke point paradox. It's never been harder to fully control a maritime passage, but it's never been easier to disrupt one. A carrier strike group projects power. A $20,000 drone can disable a $2 billion destroyer. Traditional naval dominance assumed you needed a fleet to threaten a choke point. Now you need a fishing boat and some underwater drones. India imports 90% of its oil by sea, 70% comes through the Indian Ocean. The country's entire economic model depends on those lanes staying open, and New Delhi has zero ability to guarantee that when other powers decide to settle scores in the same water. But vulnerability breeds focus. In May 2025, 36 Indian warships surged into strike position off the coast of Karachi, both aircraft carriers, 7 destroyers loaded with BrahMos cruise missiles, 6 submarines beneath the surface, the largest deployment since 1971. Pakistan's entire navy stayed docked, not for a day, for 7 months. India didn't fire a shot. It didn't need to. The presence alone was the message. As of December 2025, India's Navy chief confirmed the operation was still ongoing. That's not an exercise. That's a blockade in everything but name. How did India get here? 20 years ago, this was the country that got swindled out of $3 billion for a second-hand Russian aircraft carrier that showed up half-gutted. The same country whose coastline was penetrated by 10 men in a rubber dinghy during the 2008 Mumbai attacks. 166 people died because India's 7,500-kilometer coastline had, in the words of its own Auditor General, security in a state of neglect and apathy. India learned 2 lessons from those humiliations. Never leave your coast undefended. Never depend on someone else to build what keeps your country safe. September 2022, INS Vikrant commissioned. 45,000 tons. India's first indigenous aircraft carrier, 76% built with Indian hands. India's GDP per capita when it launched Vikrant was $2,353. America's was $76,000. India built a supercarrier at 1/32nd of America's per capita income for 1/5 the normal cost. Only 5 countries on Earth can build both aircraft carriers and nuclear ballistic missile submarines. The United States, Russia, France, the United Kingdom, and India, with a per capita income lower than Guatemala's. Ships are just metal in water without the system around them. In Gurugram, a facility tracks 150,000 vessels in real time. 22 countries feed data into it. 50 radar stations line India's coast. But India didn't stop at its own borders. It gifted radar systems to Seychelles, Mauritius, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives. Every gift is also a sensor feeding information back to New Delhi. India's building an ocean-wide nervous system, and most of the nodes don't even fly an Indian flag. 12 P-8 hypersonic aircraft fly 10-hour submarine hunting missions. Beneath the surface, seabed sensors along the 90 East Ridge detect the electromagnetic whisper of submarines passing overhead. India's own undersea tripwire. Across the ocean, a network of facilities. A runway in Mauritius, a listening post in Oman near Hormuz, access agreements in Singapore and Indonesia, bracketing both sides of the Malacca Strait. Combined with the Andaman and Nicobar Military Command 90 miles from Malacca's entrance, India doesn't just operate ships. India knows everything that moves. China has been watching this build-up with mounting alarm. In 2003, President Hu Jintao named his country's strategic nightmare in a closed-door Communist Party meeting, the Malacca Dilemma. 80% of China's oil squeezes through a strait barely 2 miles wide at its narrowest point. Sitting at its entrance are Indian islands, Indian airfields, Indian warships. China has spent 20 years and over $60 billion trying to solve this problem. Gwadar port in Pakistan handles 3% of Karachi's traffic. The Balochistan insurgency makes the overland route a war zone. A pipeline through Myanmar. Civil war rages within 5 kilometers of the terminus. A military base in Djibouti. 2,000 personnel 4,500 kilometers from the strait it was supposed to secure. An Arctic shipping route that's decades from viability. Every alternative is cracking. Every pearl in the string of pearls has a fault line. China is trying to buy with money what India was given by geography. And geography doesn't default. In the Indian Ocean today, India outnumbers China 15-1 in deployed warships. China maintains 7 or 8 vessels here at any given time. India surged 36 during Sinindor alone. In a crisis, India doesn't need to defeat the Chinese Navy in open battle. It just needs to close Malacca. 80% of China's oil stops. But here's where optimism meets mathematics. China has 395 warships total. India has 145. China added 30 ships last year. India's record this year is 19. The gap isn't closing, it's widening, and that's before you account for what's happening beneath the surface. Chinese research vessels are flooding the Indian Ocean right now. They're not doing marine biology. They're mapping the sea floor, collecting acoustic data for future submarine warfare. Whoever maps the ocean floor first controls the information architecture of naval conflict for the next 50 years. India's mine countermeasure fleet is, in the assessment of its own strategists, severely deficient. A limited Chinese mine deployment at key choke points could cause disproportionate disruption to Indian operations. Then there's the institutional gap nobody wants to talk about. Europe has NATO. East Asia has the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and established frameworks. The Indian Ocean has none of that. No binding security architecture. No crisis management protocols, no established norms that all parties accept. There's no hotline, no deconfliction mechanism, no shared understanding of what constitutes escalation versus routine operations. March 2026 proved the danger. The Iris Dina sank in waters India considers its sphere of influence. The ship had just completed a naval exercise India hosted. Days earlier, India had literally invited this vessel into its waters. When another Iranian warship urgently requested to dock at Kochi, India said yes. External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar stood in Parliament and said it was the right thing to do. Washington said nothing publicly, but the message was clear. Superpowers will conduct operations in the Indian Ocean whether India approves or not. India's ambition of being a net security provider in the region collided with the reality that it cannot stop America or China from doing what they want in these waters. India is participating in naval exercises across the ocean. The Quad with Australia, Japan, and the United States. Trilateral dialogues with Indonesia. Bilateral drills with France. India is hedging, building partnerships, trying to create the institutional framework that doesn't yet exist. But partnerships are not control. In 1890, the United States Navy ranked behind Brazil and Chile. Within 50 years, it dominated the world's oceans. India is on a similar trajectory, but trajectories are not guarantees. They require sustained political will, consistent funding, and the ability to outpace rivals who are sprinting in the same direction. India's defense spending is 1.9% of GDP, less than Victorian Britain spent to maintain naval dominance. The question isn't whether India can build ships, it's whether India will choose to fund them at the scale required to keep pace with China's industrial shipbuilding capacity. India will commission its 19th warship of 2026 before the year ends. 54 more are under construction. A new vessel every 40 days. The Indian Ocean has always carried India's name. The difference now is India has the fleet to enforce it. Enforcement requires more than presence. It requires the ability to deny access to adversaries, protect choke points under contested conditions, and maintain superiority when other powers decide those same waters are worth fighting for. The ocean that decides the next war already has India's name written across it. The ships are there. The bases are operational. The mapping missions are ongoing. What happens next depends on whether India can sustain the pace it set while China accelerates and America recalibrates its own priorities in waters it once ignored. India has geographic geographic advantage, operational experience, and relationships with nearly every player that matters. But advantage isn't permanence. It's a window, and windows close. The ocean carries India's name, but names don't guarantee ownership. They just mark where the fight will happen. Every choke point, every cable on the seafloor, every radar station tracking vessels in real time, all of it leads back to one question. Can India build fast enough to stay ahead of the power trying to encircle it? The next 5 years will answer that, and whatever answer emerges will determine whether this ocean remains a highway for global trade or becomes the arena where the world's largest navies finally settle who controls the water that keeps civilization running. India isn't caught in this emerging conflict. India is the fulcrum it pivots on. The Indian Ocean isn't becoming the center of great power competition. It already is. The ships are there, the bases are operational, the mapping missions are ongoing. What happens next depends on whether India can sustain the pace it's set, while China accelerates and America recalibrates its own priorities in waters it once ignored. You're watching the transformation happen in real time. 54 warships under construction, a new vessel commissioned every 40 days, an ocean-wide surveillance network that tracks everything that moves. But the real question isn't about ships or sensors. It's about whether a country can maintain the political will to fund naval dominance at the scale required when the threat is still over the horizon. History suggests most don't. India's betting everything that it will.